sure I'm not spoiling anything for you. Hi guys, this is Rosa Kelly. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm here to talk about all the books that I read for the month of August. So I have a total of 9 books that I finished, 1 book that I DNF, and 2 books that I am still in the process. So let's go ahead and start with the one that I did not finish. This is the One by One by Ruth Ware. And so on this book, we are following a group of co-workers that go into this retreat to kind of bond and do a little bit of meditation. They all work for this app company that allows you to basically follow your favorite celebrities or friends and kind of see what is the music that they listen to. And that is the part that I didn't like about this book, because it just talks a lot about that app and I just really wasn't following, and it was a little bit boring for me. What I did like about this book is the fact that they of course go into this retreat, and it's kind of like in the snow, so there's an avalanche, and then they start going and missing, and the friends start disappearing. So I did not finish the book, like I said, but I read up until page 150. So which is kind of halfway through the book, and like I said, it got a little bit boring for me. So if you've read this book, let me know. It probably gets better. Maybe I will finish it later on, but at the time that I was reading it, I just wasn't very interested. However, I do want to read more books from Ruth Ware, because I really love The Death of Mrs. Westaway, and I know she has other books that are on my TBR, like The Woman on Cabin 10, and I just really want to read more from her, but this one just wasn't very much my style. And so yeah, so that is the first one that unfortunately I did not finish. And then I have the 2 other books that I am reading right now, and so we have Lost in Neverwoods, and this is a retelling of the Peter Pan and Wendy. And on this book, children start disappearing, and Wendy has no recollection of what happened in the past. So Peter Pan comes back into her life and kind of tells her that he needs her help to find his shadow. He is kind of aging now. You know how Peter Pan is not supposed to age, and so he starts to age because his shadow basically left him, and I think the shadow has something to do with the disappearance of the other boys. So I have not finished this book. I almost halfway through the book. I'm on page like 120. So I still want to finish up this book because it's really interesting. I was waiting for the audiobook for this as well, so I think I'm just gonna start over from the beginning and listen to the audiobook now that I have it. So I'm gonna talk about this book a little bit more on my September wrap up. And another one that I am currently reading is The 10,000 Doors of January, and I've talked about this book before. So on this book, we're following January, and she goes into this house to visit her uncle, I believe. And so on this house, there are doors and artifacts, and I have just been really enjoying this book, and I am now on part 4, page 109. So I recently started this a couple days ago. So far I'm really loving how she goes and explores doors, and it's just really interesting. I'm really enjoying these books. And now let's talk about the books that I actually finished this month. And so it was a really good month for me, although I was traveling, so I was doing a little bit of reading, a little bit of audiobook, but also enjoying time with family. This is the Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare, and this is one of the Shadowhunter trilogies series. And so this is book 2. So on the first book, we're following Tessa, and she's on this mission of finding her brother, and she realizes she's a shadow hunter. So she goes into this academy to learn how to use her magic, and she meets other shadow hunter friends, and she was on a mission of looking for her brother. Now this is part 2 of that book, so I don't want to really talk about this book because talking about this book will spoil part 1 for you, but we do follow a love story, which I am just loving so much. I can't wait to read the next book on the series, which is The Clockwork Princess. And so yeah, super excited to continue with this. The next book that I read, as I mentioned before, I wanted to read a middle grade book every month, and for this month I finally read Amaris and the Night Brothers. Look at the cover of this book, it's just so beautiful. So this book is by B.B. Alston, and this is a book one of a series, so I don't think book 2 is out yet, not that I know of. But so on this book we're following Amaris. She's also on the hunt to look for her brother, so she goes into this magical school that she knows her brother went into, and to get into this school she has to compete with other students that have basically been born with magic, and they have been training all their life to go in. And so she kind of is learning her way and learning to see how, you know, she can get into the school and find out what happened to her brother. I absolutely love this book. What I love most about this book is the competition part of it. Like, she's competing with these other students, so you get to see their challenges and how she reacts to different situations, and absolutely amazing. This was a 5-star for me, and I really enjoyed this book. The next book that I read is actually one that I really loved, and one that has opened my eyes to a whole new genre, which is romance and novels. And so this is the Bookshop of Second Chances, and this book is by Jackie Fraser. It's a little bit beat up because I took it on the trip with me, so it's a little bit, it has been loved so much. So on this book we are following Thea, and so Thea inherits this house from an uncle that she doesn't even remember, but for some reason he left her the house that he had in Scotland. So then she's having a really rough month, and she decides to just take a break from everything and go to this house in Scotland and just gonna clean it up and get it ready to sell. And then she discovers in there the love that her uncle had for books, and so she gets together with these other bookstores around there that are gonna help her sell her books. So then she decides to stay on this town a little bit longer, and she makes some friends, and she is kind of having this relationship with the shop owner, and it's just really interesting to see because he's just such a grouch and she's such a breath of fresh air. I really love her personality. Like, I just really like how willing she is to do anything, and it doesn't matter how hard life is beating her down, she's just happy, and I love her. I love her jokes, I love her sense of humor, and just her positive attitude. I really love the romance. It was really fun and refreshing without being like too expected and too cheesy, and yeah, love this. The next book that I read is The Tattooist of Auschwitz. I think I'm saying that absolutely wrong, but you know what I mean. And so this is by Heather Morris. So on this book, this of course is a story of survival of World War II. It's a really sad story, but of course it's a story of survival. He had to do what he had to do to stay alive. Also try to help a lot of people in there as well, and then we also see a little bit of a love story going in there as well. And it was really sad. It made me really sad, but also made me really happy at times, and it's just a beautiful story. And so yeah, so that was this book here. The next 4 books that I have are actually some thrillers, and if you watch my thriller read-a-thon video, these are the ones that I read, but I'm just gonna quickly do a run through this as well. So this right here is The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher, and this was a beautiful surprise. I picked up this book at Barnes & Noble. I didn't know anything about it. I haven't heard anything about like reviews or recommendations. I just kind of read the back and I say, you know, this looks very interesting. So on this book we're following a mouse, and she also goes into this house that she is helping her dad clean because her grandma passes away, and she kind of has to go and clean up the house and get it ready to sell. But the house is on the mountains, and it's kind of like isolated on this small little town, and her grandma happened to be a hoarder. So when she goes into this house, she is overwhelmed with everything that she sees pregnancies. It's just like a nightmare. But she's decided to help her dad and spend some days cleaning up the place to get it ready to sell. And as she's cleaning, she finds the journal of the grandpa or step grandpa, and on that journal he's kind of narrating these strange things. They're super strange. So then she can't make sense of whatever was reading on the journal until she starts, like, you know, discovering weird things that are happening to her as well. And then she starts relating what was on the journal to what is happening, and it just gets a little bit creepy. It gets a little bit scary, and I just loved it. It was a really good thriller for me. The ending, it kind of does feel like you're, you know, like as if you're watching a scary movie, and I kind of had to like look behind me, make sure nothing was coming for me. So I love that. Absolutely love this book. For me, it was a 5-star read. And then I read the Stephen King, The Outsider. And I talked about this book before because I read If It Bleeds before I read this book, which I kind of recommend you do the opposite. Read this one first and then you read If It Bleeds. But so on this book, we are following this case where a kid gets murdered, and the way he got murdered is just so disturbing and so strange. And so we kind of follow the detective investigating and interviewing the suspects, and there's a little bit of like folklore about like the boogeyman or the cuckoo man, what they call more like a Mexican type of folklore. And so they start to discover that maybe what happened wasn't like your typical murder, but something more supernatural. And so I just really enjoyed the whole detective finding out what happened. And yes, it was a really good read. It's a really long book. But it was totally worth it. I did listen to this on audiobook, and for me this was a 4-star read, because I read If It Bleeds before, so I kind of knew what was gonna happen anyway. But I definitely enjoyed this book as well. The next book that I have here is The Maidens by Alex Macadalis. As you know, he is the same author as Silent Patient, which I love. For me, that was a 5-star read, and this is a 5-star read as well. We are following Marianne, and she goes to visit her niece after her niece's roommate was murdered. Well, first she disappeared, and then you find out that she was murdered. And there is this club on this school called the Maidens, and it's kind of like a little society of women that get together and do some like academic work, reading. And the professor was kind of strange, so Marianne suspects of the professor, and she thinks that he had something to do with the whole disappearance, something weird happening in there. And she is a psychotherapist, so she kind of goes to the school and tries to do her investigation and find out if he had something to do with it. Oh my gosh, I swear I'm gonna read everything from Alex Macadalis, because to me, I just really like his writing style. It's very easy to read. It goes really fast. I read this book in a day, and it was so engaging, and I just couldn't wait to see what happened next. And then, of course, the unexpected twist at the end, just like The Final Patient. If you read that one, you're going to love this one as well. So that is this book for me, of course, a 5-star. Then the last book that I read is The Final Girls Support Group. So I actually listened to that one on audiobook. So on this book, we are following 6 survivors of some sort of like massacre or killing. So they are called the Final Girls, and they go into this therapy group, and they are kind of like sisters. They protect each other, they talk about their issues, and they have been going to this group for like years. And a lot of the things that they talk about, you can definitely feel for them. What would it be to survive some sort of situation like that? So that was for me really interesting. But then they realize, or they find out, that one of them is writing a book about what has happened to all the girls. And so they kind of start suspecting of each other, and then they start disappearing. Well, for me, I got a little bit confusing at that part, and I just really just wanted to finish the book, but I wasn't very connected to the characters. And so for me, it was like a 3-star, but definitely worth reading because it was entertaining. Those are the books that I read for this month. I hope that you guys had a good reading month as well. Let me know if you have read any of these books, and let me know if you recommend any books for me to read. I am right now putting together my fall TBR, and I just can't wait to read more thrillers, read more fall type of books, and just put me on a nice pumpkin spice mood. And so yeah, so I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.